So, as some of you guys know, I've been working on, let's say, a paintball P90 platform, and there are also magazines for that, of course, to go with it. But I've also done some other things, and I've already some other things in mind to do mount on the same platform, let's say. And one of the crazy ideas was when I was just fooling around, you could say, with some duct tape and some Tipx magazines, was to make an more like a G11 style of loading system. And I must say it plays really nice, to be honest, but still you're talking about Tipx magazines. There are only like 12 rounds and they are already empty, so it's kind of fast, but at the same time it's kind of fun to play around with. So if you got a lot of those magazines and you may see this and think like, oh, this is really fun, then yeah, you can go ahead and use this product that I made. And the product is this thing right here. It will install just like a normal magazine, so you could use the normal magazines, and I'll say like, okay, I run out those magazines, I will install this adapter right now and install the magazines. You do have to make sure that you really install them, that they click in place, otherwise it can fly out one time. But in this way you can use Tipx magazines. Also Zeta Max and the several rounders, but I find this is more practical to use. How this works is you can also basically remove this like this. There's still a ball detent in here, so you won't lose the paint further than when you remove it. And also preloaded, so you can also just install it like this on it. But how this system works is you will only loading. So how this system works is you will only shooting to one magazine at a time. When this magazine is, in this case, this one will be fed because the pin is at that side. When you see through this window like there's no paint anymore left, or your marker will stop shooting paint, it's time to flip it around and then you will shoot through this one. So in the meantime you can already say like, okay, I will reload this one, and you'll still be able to fire in the meanwhile if you need to. And then when this one is empty, flip it around and go at it again. Of course you need to be careful, but you will feel it. If there's still paint inside and you would, let's say, put some lot of force to it, you will basically smash a paintball inside of here. You got a lot of mess. But what I've noticed, you will feel it, because of course you got here the window, but I have not made the window any lower, so you cannot really see if there may be still 2 or 3 paintballs left. If you really want to, you could drill a hole here and you can see that, but I find this is kind of good enough. And when you turn it and you feel like, oh, it doesn't want to go, then stop forcing it, you know. Just stop. And then I've not had any issues with that I was chopping paint and things like that. But there were definitely times that I was thinking like, oh, I'm going already switch it because I think I'm already empty. And then I felt like, oh, it was not ready yet. So you will feel it, and yeah, that's pretty much it about it. For this I got more like, let's say you got the Tippmann 98 conversion kit type releases. So because they are a little bit more compact, so it was really a bit more nicer to use on this type of platform. So one release will be in the inside and the other will be on the outside. This is also something that I need to note. If you install it like this and place this on the table and you use it on, let's say, lay it on the table on the right side, you will release the magazine. It will press on it. You could say, okay, then you need to make something that it's kind of sitting higher. Yeah, that could be done, but I think it makes it more bulky. Just keep in mind that you have to put it on the table like this, then nothing is going on. But it is something to mind. But when you're playing it doesn't is any problem. And now it's kind of okay. You can feel the button, press the button, and do your thing. And because it's lower and things like that, you have room enough to push the magazines in and grab them out. And yeah, it's a fun platform to play around with. And I used the switch. With also, you can see in the movie, you can shoot quite fast with this, the ETA one. And then it's really fast to empty this magazine. So yeah, and sometimes some stage you feel like you're more reloading than something else, but yeah, that's what comes with the territory with Tipx magazines, I guess. So with 7 rounders it would look like this. So you can install them, there's nothing wrong with them, but yeah, of course just 7 rounds. It's really easy, very fast to clear those magazines out, so 12 are better to use. Of course you can also use the Zetamax if you're a fan of those magazines. I'm not a fan of them, but they can be used because you can still reach the buttons. So you can still activate them even from the inside out. So you could still have some room. It's a little bit, you could say this hook thing is a little bit in the way, but still doable, no problem. With this you got 10 rounds, then you flip them around and you got another 10 rounds, you need to activate them again, and then so in a way you could say it's a sort of a benefit to use those magazines, is because then you could say you're gonna shoot through this magazine first, so you activate this one, then the paint is getting under tension, then you could say okay, now I switch over. Now at this moment I activate this magazine, so the paint is not getting under tension before it's needed to be under tension. Let's put it that way. With that said, it's more hassle, you know. If you forget the button, in this case it doesn't really cause a jam, but it causes like that you're thinking you're going to shoot and it may not feed correctly. So I like the simplicity of just inserting a magazine and it works, no extra steps. But if you are used to that, of course, it's not a problem. It's because you're used to it, but a lot of other magazines don't use that system of activating it manually. And I got only 2 Zetamax and I never get really used to it. It's strange to me. And also I don't like this motion at all. It's an awkward wrist motion to make. It's not fast in my opinion at all, and makes it all so more complicated than it needs to be. And before somebody is going to ask this, is this possible? Is this possible to use the Mac couplers on this platform? Yes and no. You can in a way, but you have to understand that, let's say, this one makes it overcomplicated. But let's imagine, but I don't have the attachment on it, that there were 2 12 rounders, and this also have 2 12 rounders. Then, when this magazine is empty, I need to press this button that's now really hard to reach, but it can be done. Then pull this one out, and I need to put the other magazine in this macro. So I need to wait before I can do this process to first empty this one out. Then I got room in my other macro, switch it over, and then I take this one, insert it Is this more easy, more fast? I don't think so, because you cannot reach this button so easy. You need to first lay this one down or something like that, otherwise you don't have something to place this one in. And also keeping track of this, and this is also this makes it even more nightmare, because you could also magazines on this side, because there are 4 7-round magazines. So it is that you can see on this one really clearly the spring and see what the paint is doing, but you make it so way too complicated. And that's why I would recommend just keep it simple. You can push the button way more easy, grab the magazines way more easy than this one. It's also of course less bulky, but at the same time it kind of got this charm, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We talk about how to use this, and it's pretty basic. It is different of course, but it's not hard to do. Of course, if you got the, let's say, the P90 setup with the wheel riser on top of it, or let's say the classic P90 look, so not the low profile hook, then you cannot use this, because it will just get in the way. You can install it of course when the magazines are not in place, but afterwards it's the problem is then you cannot get the magazines in place, because this part is in the way. And that makes totally sense, but maybe you did not think about it. Then you know that's not possible. You need to use a low profile look in order to fit this mag adapter. And of course this is how it would look when you use let's say an air tank or a stock, so it's no longer a bullpup setup. So even though it's more forward, you can still reach the magazines quite easily with your arms. So that's not a problem. Of course it's more like a big motion than let's say before, but it's still doable. When you use it as a bullpup setting, it's closer to you and feels like a little bit less bulky, I guess. When you put it more forward, it's kind of noticeable, like it's getting skinny and then it gets really big at the front. But it's still not too bad to see it. Maybe I can give you a little bit of a point of view of it. I think it's not really realistic if you see it like this, but for me personally, when I see it sometimes, but as a paintball player you don't see it so much, because you cannot put your head so close, but it feels a little bit like a double barrel shotgun or something when you see it, because of the 2 rounded back caps, I guess. Maybe because also you have this switch that you kind of have with, but I think it's more to open it up than anything else, but still. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of that. Okay, now I want to make an assembly video to show you a little bit how we how to make this thing. You have to see this as, let's say, 3 parts. When it comes down to the overall shape, you got this little tail piece. You will just install those with 2 screws at the front. So that's really basic, but I will show it. And you got this cap. When you remove this cap, that's the time that you will install also this disc that will rotate, and this tab right here. There will be no activator pin, that's just an empty space, so that it doesn't destroy, let's say, your P90 mount. The magazine catches I cannot really show anymore how to install them, but it is just a piece you place inside of there, and it is spring. You can see it shine a little bit underneath there. You place that spring there. I will show the size of it in the documentation. And what I do now lately is just place a piece of filament inside of here that's not unused, and just use an iron and melt that flush so it will melt in place. When you do that, it doesn't really show up anymore. It's nice camouflaged, you could say. If you don't really like the idea of that, you can also use an iron wire, of course, but yeah, then you need to glue it in, things like that, but it's still possible. But I made it in a way that you can just use a piece of filament, and that's good enough. You need the normal Allen key to reach inside of that because it's quite deep. But when you have done this, you will never really have a need to remove this part. So just make sure that the sides are flush. Install this, do it tightly so there's no play on it, and then you should be fine. Because I did want to make this strong, I inserted some brass inserts there, because it's kind of two magazines there and it's all just resting on that side. So you can see that all the sides is not really a lot to see, it's just some screws still sticking there. You can also just insert it with in the plastic itself, because you never really remove it afterwards again anyways, but it's kind of up to you if you want to do it with the brass inserts or not. On the back side, it's only held in place with those two screws right here, and they are just barely inside of there. So at this place I really recommend that you do use a brass insert, otherwise it doesn't really have much meat to grab on, and it will probably fail on you, I think, because yeah, there's really not much the place where I could place a screw. If you are really happy with, let's say, how it works with the test fitting, and you say like, okay, I'm not going to take it apart anyways anymore, then you could also say I'm gonna use some glue. Also, thing to keep in mind, to install it, it's wise to put this part in the middle, otherwise you cannot take it apart. This is because there are some pins at the bottom right here, you can see them a little bit, and if you put them in one side, it's in the way for, and this is a prototype model, but it will roughly look like this. There's this thing in the center and it will be in the way, so it will prevent you from installing it. But yeah, this side will basically look like this. You need to of course clean that one out. Besides the bolts, there's nothing really functional that you need to worry about. You can see here the brass inserts, and use only really tiny screws, otherwise they will push out in the Mac wall and it will prevent you from installing the Mac. This is the ball detent. If you don't like to use it, you can choose to not install them, but I would say why not? Just install it, it's really easy to install. Just place the spring inside of the slide and slide it right in there. In this case, when you want to slide this piece out, there will be a spring flying out with a BB in this case. If you're not careful. So you got this thing right here. I use a long bolt to make this pin, and I've put some the heat shrink around the threads of this bolt. This makes it look, yeah, this makes it feel a little bit nicer. But I did not even apply heat to it, I just slide it around it. It's tight enough so you don't need to heat it or something like that. To make, let's say, the center axle of this point, you just install the bolt on the top. Install it there, so it got something to really to pivot around. So then you're really done with this piece. Because this is a prototype, I drilled the hole a little bit too big, and it goes past this part, so it's a little bit different for you guys. But you press the spring inside, and you can use a BB. Or if you don't have BBs laying around from Airsoft, you can 3D print, let's say, the spring head for this. It will be in half circle with a pin on it. It will do the same job. Then to install this piece, just slide it back. But also press down on the, let's say, the spring head or the BB. Depends on what you're using. Hold it in the middle. And don't forget about the Mac door. Then install this piece. So in this case you can choose to say like, okay, I will place some glue around this so it's more solid, you could say. But when you use the brass inserts, for me at least, it feels like surprisingly strong, let's put it that way. Because I was thinking like, oh, it's getting too weak, to be honest. But for until now I've not really experienced any problems with it. That it is just a tiny screw holding this thing in place, because after it's installed it will lock in place and it's both sided kind of pressed in there, so you don't notice anything. So yeah, after installing the last screw, everything should be fine. Of course, also test that it works. It looks nicely in place at let's say also you will notice you cannot push it any further than that. But just make sure that that works and that you feel like the positive click, that you know, okay, it works. With mine it's a little bit messy because I needed to modify it, because the cutoff circle was not working correctly with the first design. So I kinda was getting creative with the heating iron to modify it, but yours model will work just fine. And this one is even also really working fine, but the clicking is not always that correct. But if you just push it all the way, it's fine. In my case, and also for you. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, if you guys like it, then you can find the links of it below. And see you guys next time.